Good morning, everybody, and welcome. We'll give it just a minute so that everybody can kind of settle in for the next hour. Hopefully you've got a nice cup of tea or a cup of coffee or a cup of something. If you want to put into the chat box where you are joining us from, we always like to see that. We're assuming it's Monterey County, but you know what they say about assuming. We've had people show up from New Zealand, actually, so I'm not sure what county that's considered, but let us know where you are, where you're joining us from. We're going to give it just a minute so everybody can get in and settled. All right, go ahead and get started then. So again, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Leading Change, Surviving Change webinar. Today is sponsored by the Monterey County Workforce Development Board. My name is Tara Brennan, and I'm the events manager here at CEA, and I'll just go over a couple of housekeeping details with you before we start. Your audio is muted, but we do love to hear from you and have you participate. So if you have questions pertaining to the presentation, go ahead and put those into the Q&A box that's down on the bottom of your screen, kind of to the left. That's where Jessica will be able to monitor that area. If you're having any technical difficulties or for whatever reason you did not receive the handouts, please put your email into the chat box. That's where I will be, and I'll be able to help you out there. Just take note that there is going to be a very quick survey at the end of this. It'll be a QR code at the very end. You can just snap a picture of that QR code and it'll take you straight over to the survey, and we would love to hear back from you. So please do that. And this webinar is being recorded, so it will be available probably at the end of the week or so, maybe early next week, on the Monterey County Workforce Development Board's website. So there's always that option as well. So with all that said and done, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Jerry Hernandez. He's the Management Analyst Business Services Manager with the Monterey County Workforce Development Board. Jerry, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Tara. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you. The purpose of the Workforce Board is in part to help stabilize, strengthen, and grow businesses. We do this in primarily three ways. You'll see on this slide under recruitments. We do offer all our services, by the way, are at no cost. We offer job and career fairs, customized recruitments. That means for larger companies, we can have recruitments specifically focused just on your business. We have job boards and other promotional activities. Under training, which helps businesses to stabilize and grow. We have incumbent worker training program, which as long as you have current employees who have been with you at least 6 months, and you're looking at wanting to grow and extend the capabilities of that particular employee. We have funds available to offset training cost. We have on-the-job training programs, which are focused at entry-level workers. And we can also help you to offset your training cost. The individuals in this case are ones who are just starting off their careers. And then finally, at times, you may find yourself having to lay off individuals. Things haven't worked for the business, or you're changing. We have programs that can help you with the process of laying off individuals. Hopefully you'll contact us, because oftentimes other companies may want to target some employees who have some skills that they can invest in, and then take advantage of that. The other resources and services that we offer, we have the micro loan program, and we have one that's almost over another month or so. It's targeted to micro businesses, companies with 5 or less. There's about $2,500 grant that's available. So if anyone fits in that category, you can contact me. We have the human resource hotline, which we'll speak about in a moment, but that's an incredible resource. Many small businesses aren't able to afford their own HR person, but you can get those services. And again, that will be spoken of shortly. We have resources and referral for individuals that are starting their businesses. And then rapid response, we want to work with you again to when you are making your company smaller, and we can support during those periods of time. Last month, I should say February, we had our first webinar of the year, the 2023 labor law update. Today, obviously, leading change, surviving change, but I also wanted to invite you to stay tuned for one that will happen on Wednesday, June 14th. The topic should be of interest to you, 10 ways to stay out of court. So again, I wanted to mention that will be another free webinar. And if you're interested, we look forward to seeing you then. All right, let me turn the stage back to Tara. Thank you.
Awesome, Jerry, thank you. And I will put the registration link into the chat box at the end for that June webinar as well, so that everybody has that.
And this is my contact information. I apologize. So if you want to contact me, you can reach me at 831-755-5393.
Awesome. Thank you, Jerry. And now I'd like to go ahead and introduce our presenter today. Today we have Jessica Mirable. She is one of our longtime presenters. And Jessica, it is all yours.
Thank you, Tara. And thank you everyone for joining us today. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you, Jerry, also. Always a pleasure working with you. And we are California Employers Association, and we work with Jerry and his team, and we provide human resources, services, and solutions to employers across the state of California. And in some cases out of the state when they have a presence here in California. And here's our information also in front of you, and it's in the handout. Also, our lawyers make us say that we are not lawyers. We provide guidance, and we always recommend that if you have a need for legal counsel, that you always seek that legal counsel from an attorney. What we will provide you today is guidance around leading and surviving change, and hopefully some recommendations for you as you move forward into 2023. What we will be talking about today are some of the changes in the workplace that we are already seeing in 2023. Also, providing you with some strategy tips to help you lead and manage change. And whether you are a leader of a team or many teams, or you are a leader of yourself, we all go through change. So these tips that we'll talk about in these strategies will hopefully be beneficial to you, regardless of where you currently are in your current role. Additionally, we'll discuss how to develop a committed team to help you implement change. Many times we try to go it alone, and we need help when we're implementing change in the workplace. Lastly, some tools to help you to navigate that change as you move forward into 2023. I encourage you, if you have questions throughout my presentation, feel free to ask them. Tara will also be looking at the chat and the Q&A, as well as myself. And if you have a question that you want to ask, feel free to put that into the Q&A, and we will answer it just as soon as we can as we're going through the presentation. I'll also allow some time after the presentation for any questions you may want to ask also around a specific nature and some changes you're going through, or a question you may have about what we discussed today. So, changing times, and what we like to call at CEA, the evolution of the modern workplace. Oh my goodness, have we seen change in the past 3 to 4 years, haven't we? And as we think about these changing times, we know and understand at CEA that we have all faced many changes in 2022, and also we're seeing some in 2023. Leaders have been asked to do so much throughout these years, and they've been forced to make tough decisions and to be flexible and to think about, gosh, how do we make this happen? How do we make this work? What do we need to do next? And really stretching our leaders when it comes to change and what we've seen in the past several years. Another thing we know, change happens continuously. It's part of the workplace. It's part of life, personal and work life. And the more that we can work with it and be able to be proactive around change can be really helpful also for us as leaders and as career professionals in the changing times that we're seeing, even in 2023. So some of the trends that we are seeing in the workplace for 2023, and some of them are still part of what we've seen in the last few years, but this is some current information that we are hearing about. And one of the main ones has to do with, work for employees. That is so important. Flexibility within their roles, within their schedules. That's continuing to be an imperative for people who are looking for new roles, existing employees. Even though the market is changing a little bit, we are still seeing a very low unemployment rate, and we know that employees have choices. So people who are looking for new roles are asking that question: what's your culture like? What's the flexibility here? What's the work schedule? So keeping that in mind, that continues to be important to prospective employees as well as existing employees in the workplace. Video conferencing and video events, we're still seeing those. They continue on. As you can see at the bottom, 300 million people use Zoom every day. As of January of 2023, that continues to be consistent. We were seeing that last year. Hybrid working is here to stay, and we know that success really starts with us as employers defining what that looks like. We understand that some roles just aren't suitable for remote or hybrid. We get that. Yet some roles could be. And how do we as employers define that and make sure that we and our employees know what's required to be successful? Some folks are very successful working hybrid, working remotely. Others may not have that discipline to be able to get everything done. So again, as employers, we want to make sure that if we are allowing and having remote and hybrid work schedules, that we define what that success looks like. Also, we're still seeing people moving away from major cities, going to other places. I work with an employer who, during the pandemic, they allowed a lot of their employees to move out of state. So now that people are back in the office and they have hybrid schedules, it's creating a little bit of a challenge, and they're in the process of defining what's going to be required of those employees who, in some cases, moved across the country. Also, human skills are the new hard skills for the future of work. This continues to show up time and time again in articles that I am reading around trends for 2023 and beyond. And what I mean by human skills, those are those skills that tie into communication, people skills, conflict resolution, flexibility, emotional intelligence. These are extremely important as we move forward, because we as career professionals are being asked to do quite a bit, and as leaders also being asked to even do more in terms of influencing, navigating change, leading change. So critical that we also as leaders have those skills so that we can be successful too in the months ahead. So I have a question for you, and feel free to put it in the chat box. What was the most impactful change for your organization in 2022? As we think about leading change, surviving change, thriving in change, what did you see in your own workplace that you encountered last year that really had an impact for your organization? And feel free to jot that into the chat for others to see. Yeah. So we're seeing, one of our attendees mentioned people wanting to work from home. And yes, we are seeing that across the board. Leadership changes. We have seen quite a bit of that too, as tenured leaders, experienced leaders, more mature generations are retiring. People making changes, even if they're not more mature workers, just moving from companies to companies because the job market was so robust. That was something we saw also. And people changing to new jobs. Some people moving, in some cases, they're following their passion and they're leaving their company, or they're looking to see what more they can do with their existing company. And they're asking, I want to be challenged. We know for a fact that our younger generations do want to be challenged, and they tend to be the ones, based on surveys and statistics, that they have no qualms about moving to a new company if they don't feel challenged. And so whatever we can do as employers to keep growing people where they are with us, as well as providing a career path for them can be so important. Yes, and also thank you, Patty. I see she mentioned employees that had been here for many years quitting. Yes, we've heard quite a few terms around that. You've heard the term quiet quitting, where people stop doing, 100% at their current job, but also they're not engaged. And we do talk a lot with employers about engagement. And if we can help our employees stay engaged at work, they won't be leaving us, because it does favorably impact retention. But that is another thing that we have seen. And on the other side of that is a tough talent market, trying to find replacements for our employees too in our recruiting efforts. And when we lose somebody, we know we lose all of that knowledge they have about the company, and bringing someone on, we have to get them up to speed, and hopefully get them up to speed as quickly as possible. But it costs us money as employers when we lose someone, and we have to replace them. So absolutely, thank you for your participation in this question. I appreciate it. So when do we change? When we think about change in our lives and change in our careers too at work, many times we change because we want to, right? I'm going to go on a vacation, and I'm looking forward to really spending time in other countries, doing other things, getting out of my comfort zone. Or I want to buy a house. And that means, gosh, I'm going to have to save money for a down payment. I'm going to have to tighten up my budget. I'm going to have to really look at what I want versus what I truly need in order to make this dream happen. Another one might be in our careers. Within my career, within my role where I am today, I want to continue to grow in my role. So what does that look like? Does that mean I need to get additional education? Does that mean I need to acquire additional skills? Does that mean that I have to do some things around my work that shows that I'm capable or responsible for that next role and ready for that next role? So that's when we want to change, right? We have a compelling reason. We want to make those changes because we want a certain outcome, and we see that outcome in the future for us. Yet we have to make those changes to make that happen, and we want to do that. Then, of course, we have changes when we have to make changes. And those are the ones that many times are decided for us. Organizations have to make changes for a variety of reasons. It can be the competition, external marketplace, it can be the economy, a number of reasons why changes have to be made. And one of the most important ones is customers demand it. So we are human beings. We like the comfort of what we know, what we like, what we, are used to. And at times when we have to change, it kind of puts us out of sorts. And we feel that, gee, I'm not ready for that change. And I like to always say that the only person who likes change truly is a wet baby, because most of us like that comfort level that we have with what we know. So it's common to have individual resistance to change. And when I work with employers, and I work with leadership teams, and I work with staff, I always say, it's okay. It's normal to feel a resistance to change. It's normal to do that because it kind of upsets our apple cart. And so we know that change in some cases can be hard. Excuse me. If we have to learn a new skill, if we have to do something different, we know that sometimes it's something different, something that I have to do, and I'm not sure I'm liking it. Maybe because I'm new at it, I'm not as skilled as at it. Yet we know that it can be uncomfortable for us. Also, the uncertainty. Sometimes I don't know, what is this change going to look like? If I have to do this, what's it going to look like 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, a year down the road? And that's a pretty common feeling too for employees, because they're not always sure what the future is going to hold. Also, pain can be associated with discomfort. like I said, it's upsetting my apple cart. It's making me do something different. I may have to stretch more in an area that maybe I'm not so sure I'm that great at, or I have to learn something new. And also, like with listening, selective information processing. When we talk about listening skills, I say many times we listen to hear just for what we're looking for, and that's all we're really listening for. Sometimes when change is happening, we may be going directly to how's this going to impact me? What's in it for me? And I'm not hearing anything that's making me feel good as I'm listening to the announcements around change. So when we have employees who are resistant to change or are not happy about change, or maybe surprised when an announcement is made, we recommend give them grace. Give them time, because it's just sinking in for them, especially if we as leaders are announcing it. We've had time to think about it, process it, work through all the scenarios, and many times employees have just heard it for the first time. So please do not be surprised or alarmed if you sense that initial resistance. That is quite common. People ask, and they're really surprised when they hear that more than half of change initiatives fail. And as you think about some of the changes that have been going on in your organization or another organization you may have worked with, what were some of the reasons that you felt that the change efforts failed? They weren't as successful as you wanted them to be. Maybe you had to go back and rework what we thought we were going to do, or perhaps it just truly did not work at all. Many years ago, when I worked for another corporation, we had some massive changes in the department that we worked in. And part of those changes was actually putting people into roles where they had never had experience with those roles. And they had never had experience in some cases with customer service. And the intention was we're going to train people up to that job. We're going to get them ready for it. A lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of work was put into this. And what ended up happening is the realization that some people, many of them, did not want to do that work. They did not want to engage with customers. No matter how much training they had, it was not one of their core competencies. And much of that change initiative failed miserably because we forgot the people part of it. Many times we have to make sure that this is going to be something that's going to play to your employee's strength. If you put someone in a role that doesn't play to their natural talents, you may have some resistance and you may see some failure when you make those changes, no matter how much training that you do, because they may not be as good as someone else who may have those skills that you need in that role. So why do employees resist? Some of the things that we see is lack of time. We're all feeling overwhelmed these days, and it may not even be the workload. It could be the information overload that we feel from all the sources of information we get from so many venues. It may be that we have a very busy personal life, and that it takes up so much of our time. And even when I'm at work, I'm having to navigate and juggle some of the things from home life. It could be maybe I'm new at the job and I haven't quite learned it. Now you're going to ask me to do something else. So it can be a number of things why employees feel they don't have the time. Another big reason could be, gosh, we're making this change tomorrow, but I don't even know that I can do it by tomorrow or next week or next month. Will I have the skills to do it? So again, being patient with them and knowing that they're really trying to figure it out as they go along too with the changes that you're making in your organization. And I touched on, like our favorite bunny slippers, our house slippers. We like the status quo. They're warm, they're comfy, we know what to do. They always do, they always work for us. So we love our slippers because it's a comfort for us. A big one that we see is many times, and we get that at times of crisis or urgency, sometimes you can't get an employee involved in a change or in the decision because you have to make a call very, very quickly for external reasons or a crisis situation. And if an employee hasn't had a say or advanced knowledge or even an opinion on a change that's going to happen that might affect them, you may see some resistance from that. So we always encourage, if you know that a change is coming on the horizon, if you have the ability to bring your employees in who will be impacted to be part of that solution design to solve a problem that you may be encountering or you know that you're going to encounter, that can go a long way in employee commitment to that change and dedication to that change towards its success. Well, and fatigue. What more do I need to say? Many people these days in all industries are exhausted. We're just exhausted from all of the changes that we've seen. Leaders too. Leaders are human also. And we see that there's been so much that it's, whew, we're just very weary and worn. So that's something that you may be seeing too with your employees. Again, being able to be in tune to them and having those conversations with them that we'll talk about, because communications are so critical in time of change. And then lastly, what's in it for them? I always say a favorite radio station for our employees, for ourselves, is WIIFM. What's in it for me? How is this going to impact me? Is it going to benefit me? Is it going to take something away from me? What's the benefit? And we as leaders and we as change agents, because many of us, maybe we're part of a team, but we're in charge of leading a change. We have to be convinced and we have to be able to communicate those benefits when we talk about change, and do it with passion, do it with conviction, do it with belief, because I'll talk a little bit more too about, as leaders, if you're not sure about how a change is going to work, you may not be coming across in a way that is convincing to your employees. So 20% of employees will support change efforts from the start. Don't be surprised and don't be disappointed if you have that. It's common and it's human nature. Let's see, we have a comment here. Oh, okay. So I have a question here. How do you recommend engaging employees in the change? As early as you can, when you know that something is going to be happening in your organization, and you're really going to want to hear many times from the experts, the people who do the job. They have the boots on the ground, the customer to customer. They have that knowledge that many times leaders don't. So as soon as you know, I would encourage getting them involved. And it would be a conversation. Here's what we're thinking about. We don't see a value in doing this anymore this way. Let's talk about how we might be able to make this into something that would provide value to our company or to our customers, which ultimately benefits our company. As soon as you're able, get them involved and decide. Some people don't want to be involved. Others, one of the things that we find is that some employees are extremely talented when it comes to strategy. They have natural talents for that. And you probably know who they are in your organization. They can be extremely helpful for you as you're formulating what changes are going to take place in your organization. Include those. Some of your employees may not want to get involved in that until they need to know what they have to do. So as you look at the strengths and talents of your employees, bring in those that have already shown that they are able to really work through, meetings, conversations, strategy, thinking about what is, what could be, and what the consequences or benefits might be. And another recommendation from one of our attendees is a roundtable discussion with stakeholders too, is again, early on, having the conversation. People appreciate it, they respect it, and group team building and asking for change. Yes, it is still popular to ask employees and ask them for that input. What's so important in today's world is, we hear a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And when we think about inclusion, that's where everyone has a voice in your organization. Everyone has that voice. They feel comfortable in your culture to offer their opinions, to talk about, to offer innovative changes, but also to talk about what they think of a change we may have to make. And when you have that in your culture, it an employee doesn't have to wait for a change to happen to maybe even offer a recommendation to you. So there's a number of ways to get them engaged. And you as team members, don't be afraid to have the conversations with some of your more influential employees too. They may give you some insights before you announce it to the rest of the group because again, ear to the ground, boots on the ground, they're very close to their teammates for the most part too. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about ambassadors that you'll want to have when you're navigating change. Thank you for the comments and the questions. One of the things too, and thank you, Kim. One of the things that you can do also is sometimes you have to make a decision. You have to decide, are we going to go with something? Are we not going to go with something? Have we thought about all of the potential downsides to making this change or upsides to making this change? Or are there other ways that we can approach this problem with a solution that we haven't even thought of? And there's a great technique, and it's called the 6 Thinking Hats. And it was developed by a Dr. Edward de Bono. And he has a lot of books out. And it's a methodology when it comes to making tough decisions or making decisions when you want to make some changes in your organizations. And we recently did that at our own company when we had to make a call on a project. And are we going to move forward? Are we not? And the person who was leading the project had some brilliant ideas around this and some great recommendations, yet other people weren't quite as sure about this. And have we thought about everything? Do we have other opportunities, or should we even venture into this? And we did this at a recent meeting at our own company, and we involved all of our employees, even those who probably wouldn't even be impacted by the change. But we wanted to go through that methodology and ask them to do that in teams and ask questions, participate. The 6 Thinking Hats, the beauty of that is it forces you to do what I call parallel thinking. So for example, one of the 6 Thinking Hats is the devil's advocate hat, as I call it, or the black hat. And that's looking at a situation and a solution in a way that you want to poke holes in it. So if we go this way, these are all the things that might happen. What about this? What about that? The downsides. And we have a lot of folks in our company who are natural devil's advocates. That's one of their talents. That's just a strength for them. Yet we've all been in those meetings where we don't need to have that person be the only voice that's heard, right? We want to make sure everyone has a voice around that. So that's just one of the hats. The other one is a red hat. How do you feel about this potential change? What are your emotions around this? Too often, and I know when I was growing up in corporate America, you weren't allowed to talk about feelings. That was a sign of weakness. You just marched to the tune of whatever drum was beating at that time. And so it allows people to get their feelings heard too. Yeah, I'm not comfortable with this, or this is the 10th change, or why do we have to do this? But everyone's able to do it at the same time. That's the real power of this. So no one's being singled out or looked upon as someone who's whining. And the 6 Thinking Hats, when you bring people together, or just when you bring them together and start looking at a problem and potential solutions, that can be very, very powerful. We found when we did that for our own team, we saw from our team members some brilliant recommendations that we hadn't even thought of that can be very powerful as we move forward with this change that we're looking to make. So again, thank you for asking that question about how do you engage them, your employees. There's a number of ways to do it. And part of it is starting at the beginning and saying, how do we get them involved if we can, as early as possible. Some of the common questions that you will get asked when you're announcing a change or when you're making a change, and these are not just going to be on the minds of employees, they're going to be on the minds of your leaders too. So what's changing? What exactly is going to be happening? You may not have all of the answers on what may be happening in the future, but we have to be pretty clear on what's going to be changing for our employees. Again, they're going to be listening with that ear. What's in it for me? How is this going to impact my life, my work life? The why is extremely important also. Let's make sure we're clear on that. It's not because a CEO or the president or the owner woke up one morning and decided, oh, let's just make a change and disrupt everyone. No, there's usually a pretty darn good reason why we have to make changes. Many of you mentioned staffing. There may be some things that you've had to do or you may have to do this year where you have to reallocate staffing, reorganize staffing, do things to put people in new roles or have people take on extra work because of some of the staffing changes that you've made. Big question, how's it going to impact me? And also success. What's success going to look like for someone who may be going into a new role, or if you're changing some things in the process of the work that you do, what will success look like for that employee? Employees need to know that they're being successful. They need to know they have a chance of being successful. Earlier, I talked about that change in a company I used to work for. Let me tell you, these employees had no clue how they were doing when they had to go into something totally new. And it was very frustrating for them. And we know at the time it impacted our customers. Always keep in mind, how is this going to impact our customers, those who pay our salaries, those that we serve? How will it impact them? And then lastly, what kind of support will I get during this change? And I'll talk a little bit more about that, what leaders can do to be supportive and how they can show up at times of change. But employees want to know, no one wants to fail. And if I have to do something new, I want that support. I want to know that my leader, my boss, will help me work through this. Another example I have is a few years back, I was asked to do something new that I hadn't done at the company that I currently work for. And I had done it in another company and I had done similar work over the years, but I wanted to make sure I did a good job for my current company. And because it was new and it seemed a little overwhelming, I was feeling a little bit of stress around it. And I was so grateful that at the time, the president of the company said, hey, let's talk about this. Let's look at it this way. Here's some suggestions. And it's going to be fine. No matter what happens, it's going to be fine. And she was right. But what I really appreciated about that support from my president was that, you know, I knew that she was there. I knew that she had my back. And I knew that no matter what, we were going to make it work. And we may have some bumps along the road, but it was going to be okay. And it turned out to be really okay. So that's the kind of things that's the kind of support that employees need. Just knowing you've got their back, no matter what, you've got their back. So another thing to think about with change too is reframing change. How do we view it? And being realistic about it. We know every project, every new journey that we take in our companies, even in our life, requires change, right? We know that. And change is just part of life. We know that it's probably going to impact us and you know, sometimes we think it's going to be far worse and we find out it's far greater than what we even thought it was in a good way, and it benefits us. And I'm challenging all of you, think about some of the changes you've made in your lives and your career. Think about some of those changes that you thought, gosh, why am I doing this? I'm not going to do this. It's not going to work out, but doggone it, it worked out beautifully. So we know change is personal. Having confidence that we've succeeded before will also be helpful with changes coming your way this year. We know it's emotional, and we know that we have to work with our employees. And if they are emotional about it, we need to allow them that time and space to talk about it. It's hard for employees to get to rational thinking when they're still in the emotional stages. So successful leaders will take that time, let an employee vent, listen to them. We still have to move forward, but giving them that time and space to do that goes a long way too. And the other thing, and we see this with our younger generations and even our mature ones, but today our younger generations are the bulk of the workforce, more than 50% of the workforce. They like progress. All surveys show they like progress. They want to be challenged. And part of that, in order to do that, is going to require some change. So as you continue to work with our current workforce, know they like that challenge. They enjoy that challenge. So how you present them present it to them can go a long way in them looking at it in a positive way. And then, of course, we've talked about this also too, is people commit to what they're able to help shape and create. And that goes such a long way in that commitment to that change. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard of John Kotter. He is one of the most well-known leaders of change, and he's done a considerable amount of work around change. And he and his company have put together a very powerful approach to leading change and things. And this could even be just a visual checklist for you too, when you talk with your own teams and your leaders as you go through change in your organization. Do you need to do this for every change in your company? No. If it's a minor change, not a big deal. But if it's something that's going to impact your employees, we highly recommend it. So the first one is creating that sense of urgency. Back to, why are you making that change? Many times competition will force us to make a call very quickly and make a change in our process or in our pricing or in our marketing or whatever it may be. And also we may have to reallocate staff due to that urgency. So competition can be a big one. External factors, internal factors, I talked about those earlier with staffing, but creating that sense of urgency and being able to articulate why we have to do this change and why we have to do it very quickly. Pull together a guiding team. And this is where you want to consider working with those employees on your teams that already have influence with their coworkers, those who really are looking to do everything they can. Your engaged employees, right? Those that are committed to the success of the company. And pulling those employees together early on also to not only help you as you work through how we do the change, but also to help other employees navigate the change once the process is started, once you're starting to make that change. Having a sound change vision and strategy. Many companies used to have 5-year plans. Some still do, but in the world we live in, it's tough to have a 5-year plan from year to year. You have to evolve, you have to adjust, and you have to be flexible, because let's face it, who knew in 2020 that we were going to have a pandemic? No one knew. And that really made some significant impacts to all companies. So thinking about developing the change vision and the strategy, whether it's a year, whether it's 18 months, really develop it, and making sure that you have those milestones along the way, and knowing that if this happens, we may have to shift and change course. Communicate for buy-in and understanding. You cannot communicate enough when you're going through change. And I'll talk a little bit more in detail around that, but trust me, the more you communicate during change, beginning, during, afterwards, is so critical for your employees, and also for future change for your company, because they know you're going to keep them updated on everything that's happening. Empower others to act, allowing your folks to make some of those decisions on those things as you're going through change. Sometimes you think you're going to have to go right, but you're going to have to decide to do left. But empowering those to act and giving them that autonomy that may be needed during change. Don't let number 6, produce short-term wins. This is important for keeping people focused on what you're trying to achieve. And what I mean by that is celebrating those milestones. Maybe we have an 18-month change ahead of us, or a 12-month change ahead of us. Being able to celebrate those milestones as we hit that 3-month mark, or even that 1-month mark on some things that we've already accomplished, keeps people engaged, keeps them excited, keeps them committed to what you're trying to accomplish, because they feel that they're being successful along that path. And then you can't let up during change. You have to keep, as I said, about communications, staying on top of it, making sure that we're celebrating those milestones, that we're making adjustments as needed. We can't let up. Once it's all done, once the change has been completed, you've created a new culture in some cases when massive changes have taken place. How do you make it stick? What do you do? More often than not, when it comes to changes, we don't spend enough time on that post-evaluation. We're just glad the change is done. Yet what we need to do also is say, okay, the change is done. How do we keep it alive? How do we keep the culture going? How do we make this stick? That also is extremely important in sustaining those changes that you've made. So 4 ways also for you to lead change, foster change is to be able to really, give me just a moment here, sorry about that, is to, empower your employees. I talked about that earlier, making sure that there's trust at the foundation of any team. There has to be trust. And when you have that foundation within your own team, that allows your employees to start feeling like, okay, I believe what Heather's saying. I believe what Phyllis is saying. I believe what Sam's saying. They're my leader. They've worked with me before. And I know that if I have to make a call on something, that I can do it because I know that they have my back. So being able to really trust your employees and empower them. Also, this is so important. When you lead managers who lead teams, and yourself too, is prioritize your own development too, making sure that your managers know what the change is, that they're comfortable with that change too. It's hard to promote, to lead, to communicate changes for your managers if they're not fully apprised or feel fully up to date, or they're not sure how it's going to impact them. And then of course you want to provide those tools, and you want to create that culture of creativity and learning, because you're going to find through change there may be some ideas that come up that might allow you to be a little flexible in some of the changes that you're making. So let's look at these a little bit deeper. So as you involve and empower your employees, again, communicate the change, keep talking about it. As leaders, you want to just even having hallway conversations, checking in with employees, how's it going? And also you want to be authentic. You want to, don't be afraid to say, gosh, I know this is tough, or you may find some frustration going through the change that your company's doing too. It's okay. You're human as a leader. It's okay. One of the things I truly appreciate about the organization I work for at CEA is that people are okay to, you can be yourself. You can say, this is frustrating. Why aren't we getting there? What do we have to do? You can be yourself, and you can talk about it without feeling that you're going to be looked down upon, or you're a complainer, or things like that. Also, as a leader, be visible. You can't be visible enough during change, because the richest conversations you will have is when you're having a conversation with one of your leaders or your employees in the hallway, or just, in the break room. Ask questions. Encourage a lot of questions. If someone has a question, chances are 5 other people have that same question. We want people to feel very comfortable asking questions. And then continue to build that trust, making sure that employees know that they've got your support and that they've got your backing at all times during this change. And you're going to expect some bumps in the road. That's normal during change. So also making sure as you prioritize your manager development, here's some tips for you too, as we think about this and think about how important this can be for our managers. They have to have their own sense of ownership too. And part of that is they have to know what's going on. They have to be updated, because, they have to convey that to their teams regularly. What's the process for your managers? Do they have a roadmap? Are there expectations that you need from them, milestones, what that success is going to look like along the path of that journey? The more your managers know, the more they have to lead that change, the better they can do that. And continue to grow your managers too. You may find that during change, or after change, or even before change, gosh, you may have a couple of managers that may really benefit from certain trainings or coaching, right? They may need some coaching on how they can speak with confidence, how they can lead change, how they can show up as a credible leader. More often than not, we're thrown into a leadership role and we don't get a lot of leadership training. And if you have managers who are new to their role, they could greatly benefit from workshops, from a leadership series, from coaching to help them navigate through change and communicate well. And of course, give them the freedom to coach. And you want your managers to coach your people on a regular basis. Our younger generations, again, when I talk about our younger generations, I'm speaking from what we see in surveys from those generations. They're used to being coached. They have been coached all their lives. So coaching is very important to our younger generations. They want to know how they're doing. Not once a year, not twice a year, yet on a regular basis. And during change, maybe even more frequently, so that they feel they're doing the right things. And then also the essential tools to navigate change too. What people need, they need a plan. What does that roadmap look like? I remember over the years with companies I've worked with and some of our massive changes, oh my gosh, the roadmap looked like I was going on a one-year journey all over the world. It was a lot of information, yet having a roadmap or even an action plan that says, okay, month one, here's what we're going to do, or even week one, and then month two, month three, and so on. But having that action plan so the managers can lead that too. The training, making sure you have the right staffing during change, and having regular meetings. I'll talk a little bit in a moment about town hall meetings, having team meetings and company meetings to discuss it. Technology, making sure you have the right technology, or if there needs to be an upgrade to that. Marketing, if there's something that's happening that's going to impact your customers or potential customers, do you have all the marketing in place? Or if you're rolling out a new product or a service, are we shored up on our marketing front? Do we have the marketing support and tools that we need? And then also a pilot program, a beta test, whatever you want to call it. Let's test this. Let's see how this is going to work. One of the things I really appreciate also is when you can work for a company that says, let's try this. Let's test it on a small scale to see if we can even do it on a big scale. Let's see if it's going to work. A lot of smaller companies have that flexibility to do things pretty quickly. So as you think about it for your company, making sure that maybe you try something and maybe it's not going to work, or maybe you learn that you can do it even better than what you originally thought. So don't be afraid to test and start small as you're looking to make some changes. And then, of course, making sure you create that culture of learning and creativity. In today's world, innovation is so important, and you want people on your team to feel that they have that voice, that they are part of that team, they're part of that company. Gosh, if I see a way of doing something better, or I have an idea, or I come across something on an article that I think maybe our company can benefit from, I have that freedom to share that. I have that freedom to bring that up and say, is this a potential opportunity? Sometimes it might be, sometimes it may not be, but having that environment can be so powerful as we're living through, unprecedented change in our economy, in our world, in our workplace today. And then, of course, that ongoing communication and coaching, that's important as you're going through change for your employees. And being able to play to employees' strengths, assigning those work projects, those tasks where you already know people do a great job on that already. When people are able to apply their natural talents, when they're good at something and you allow them to do that, that helps with engagement that was asked about earlier. It helps with commitment. It helps with dedication. And it also shows that you as a leader, that you pay attention to what your people do and what they do really well, and you position them for success by putting them in situations or giving them projects that really do play to what they do well. And they may tell you that I want to continue to do this. You may see it and continue to give them those assignments. But that goes a long way also in that culture of creativity and learning. And then as leaders, provide feedback as much as you can, and think about feed forward too. Feedback talks about what you just did, good or maybe not so good. Feed forward talks about just for a moment what you did, and here's how you can make it even better in the future. So when you think about how I coach and how I provide guidance to my employees, feedback is always great. Feed forward can be also quite powerful when you say, gosh, Phyllis, you did a great job on that presentation. And in the future, when you do that presentation, what would make it even more powerful is if you add this to it and this to it, because what that does is it helps develop people, and it also makes them feel good about the information and the coaching that you're providing them. And then, of course, recognition and rewards. Please, 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 when you're going through change, make sure that you are recognizing those people who are really helping you to lead that change, who are making that impact, who are leading the change, being invested in the change, being an ambassador for you. Make sure that you're recognizing them too. And also, your teams as you reach those milestones, making sure you're doing some things, even if it's bringing cupcakes into the office, or even if it's sending them something if they work remote or hybrid, where they can order something for themselves or for their family. Our company recently did something where for Appreciation Day, they sent us all a Sugar Wish gift card so we could order popcorn or treats that could be delivered to our home, because many of us work remote. It's those little things that really make a difference for employees. We don't recognize enough, and employees need to be recognized on a regular basis. So what employees tell us they want at work these days, they want people first culture. They want to know that they're important, that they're assets. That emotional intelligence, which is, I want to work for a boss. I want to work with people who I know they're consistent. I know that if something goes the wrong way, that I'm not going to be dealing with someone who overreacts to something, who gets angry, who gets upset, or has no patience for us. So emotional intelligence is that ability to manage our emotions in a way that our people trust us. They know when they come to us that whether it's good, bad, or ugly, that we're going to be consistent in how we work with them and how we communicate with them. Employees want meaning and purpose in their work more so than ever before. Well-being, you've heard of how important that is these days. I've talked about inclusion, and they want to grow. They want to continue to develop. We have a question here. How do you provide rewards? There's a number of ways to provide rewards and recognition to your employees. It doesn't always have to be tangible. Sometimes something as simple as a thank you, a very specific verbal thank you to someone for what they did, goes a very long way. Also, when you recognize people, even a handwritten note. I mean, who even gets like regular cards these days? Things that are tangible, like even a thank you card in the mail or on your desk. We don't see those as often in the social media world that we work in. Yet there are things that you can do, and there's a great book, and it's been around for a lot of years, and it's got some great ideas, and they've probably updated it. It's called 1001 Ways to Recognize Your Employees. But as you do a little research online too, you can find there are a lot of ways to do that. But don't just think tangible. It doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be a gift card. It can be something as simple as a handwritten note, an email, a phone call, or if you're in the office, taking them to lunch, just talking to them and thanking them for what they've done. Let's see here. Okay. All right. Thank you for that question. So what employees, what we continue to think about, what employees need, what they need from leadership, the things that I've talked about already, and the most important things are making sure they have the tools, they know what the path is, they're communicated with regularly. And one of the most important pieces too is concern for their well-being. Folks, we've all come off of some pretty crazy few years, and even people coming back to the office now or doing things back to what we used to do before the pandemic, there's a sense of anxiety. There's a heightened sense of anxiety for people. So being able to show that concern for your employees can go a very long way, and I'll touch on that just a bit more. You as managers, I talked about this earlier. It's important. We tend to, as leaders, put ourselves last. And as leaders, you have to make sure you're in good shape to lead change, that you're feeling good about it and you're able to ask those questions, and that you know you're going to be okay. No matter what, it's going to be okay. So the more we can let our managers know that you're going to be okay as we prepare for a change, that helps them to not worry about themselves and take care of their employees. So all of these things are important, just as it is with employees, but just as important for leaders and managers in your organization. So here's some ways as you think about communicating. Remember, I mentioned earlier, you can't communicate enough. You truly cannot. And making sure that you're preparing your leaders speaking points so they know the things to say. And sometimes you may not have to if it's a simple change, but if it's going to be a significant change in your company, speaking points can be very helpful to managers. And you don't want 5 different managers or 10 different managers creating their own speaking points. One of the things that's extremely important as you roll out change is consistency. Making sure employees are hearing the same thing from one leader as they hear from another. And the more we can help our leaders do that, we'll have a united message as we roll out this change. Town hall meetings, those can be so powerful, even at the beginning and even in the middle and even towards the end. Having a all employee meeting and hearing from the top leader of the company and other leaders of the company really do help people to connect, to understand, and to know that they have an opportunity to ask questions of their leaders and even of their top leader of their company. Over the years, as I've worked with CEA, and I've had the privilege of working with a lot of great companies, and employers who are so committed, one thing I find is that all of the senior leaders are very committed to their employees. They're committed to that success of the company. They're committed to doing the right thing. So we have to help our leaders to be able to do that right thing and give them an opportunity to talk to people too and communicate with your employees. FAQs, frequently asked questions. Oh my goodness, like I said, questions. It can be something as simple as putting a list out once a week or just updating people once a week. Again, communicating common questions that have come up, or do you have questions? Let's share the top questions we've had this week or this month. I've talked about the celebrations, can't celebrate enough. And then training sessions, making sure if you're going to be doing some things that are going to require upskilling your people, enhancing some of the skills that they may already have, but they're going to need to really enhance them for their new role, is that you provide that necessary training, whether it's training sessions, bringing in someone from the outside to assist. One of the things I hear a lot from our employers these days is, customer service. How do we make sure we're delivering that service to our customers, to our clients? We've seen a lot of people going from jobs to jobs in the past few years, a lot of retention issues, staffing issues. How do we get people up to speed to take care of our most, our customers and our clients? And I hear people say, where is customer service? Where is it gone? It's there. We just have to help our employees get there if they're going to be facing our customers and serving our customers and clients. So as you think about teams to help you implement that change, put together a group, think about what people you have that are really good at influencing and leading. And it may be someone on your team you're positioning for a leadership role anyway, giving them those opportunities to flex their skills, to enhance their skills, and to showcase them and give them exposure to other people in the company. Have them help you with communicating those messages, checking in with employees, and having that positive impact on that change. Again, your group has to trust each other, and that's why that communication is so important, that you feel you're moving in that right direction. You don't have anybody going off the wayward path, because that normally doesn't end well. The more you can bring people together, and again, don't be afraid to be vulnerable as a leader. Don't be afraid to say, gosh, as we go through this, we're going to have some bumps in the road. I know we are. You're probably going to be frustrated. I may be frustrated, but we're in this together. And, if you trust each other and you support each other, we're in this together and we'll figure it out. Some of the strongest teams I see, when they have something happen that goes wrong, at least they can laugh about it and get back on track immediately. It's okay as a leader to be vulnerable and know that there's going to be some bumps along that road. And then, of course, include those people from different places in your company too. Don't just go to one department. Many times we find when we're going through change, it's going to impact more than one department. We may think it's going to be just one department or two departments, but then we find out, holy cow, it's going to impact more than one. So making sure that you really think about that. And am I including enough people who may be impacted? We know some are for sure going to be impacted, but there are some who may be impacted because they're going to see things that we may not see because we're not in the doing what they do. And then also, how do you do your post evaluations? How do you take a look and say, gosh, as I'm going through it, as we're through with this, how do we assess how we did? And part of that is talking to both the leadership team, doing a post evaluation there, but also employees. How did this go? It can be in department meetings, it can be in team meetings, it can be a survey monkey, it can be questions that you ask, it can be in a staff meeting where people can provide verbally their thoughts around the change. And asking them, you're probably going to get some really good feedback that will be very helpful. Will all the feedback be positive? Maybe not. Yet you can learn from that as you implement whatever other future changes you may have to in the months or years ahead. And really listen. When people are giving us feedback, when we ask someone to give us feedback, our job is to really listen, not to defend it, not to explain it, but really listen for what they are saying and let them know, thank you. We'll absolutely take that into consideration for our next change. Or that's been really helpful. I really appreciate you taking the time to share that information with me. Sometimes feedback hurts, I know, yet as leaders, as constantly learning and growing and evolving as leaders, you're not going to be the same leader you are today that you will be 5 years from now. We have to consistently evolve and be flexible, and we learn and enhance things as we move forward as leaders. So part of that will help us too as leaders moving forward. Empathy, I can't say enough about empathy. Empathy is that ability to look at something from that other person's point of view. We're only human. We tend to listen sometimes. Okay, how's this going to impact it? What's in it for me? Or why is this person thinking this way? Or why are they upset about this? Or why are they frustrated? When we can put ourselves in their shoes and look at what's happening from their perspective, that's what empathy is. It's not sympathy. Empathy is, I understand you're kind of stuck in that mud. Let me help you get out of it. Versus sympathy is, I'm going to get stuck in the mud with you. So when we think about empathy, know that managers who display those high levels of empathy have 3 times the impact on their employees' and performance than those who don't. Some of us are naturally empaths. We have naturally that empathy skill. Not all of us do that. We don't have that talent. So aware of it is half the battle. And if someone's told you before, gosh, you never look at it from my point of view, or you're only thinking about it from your point of view, it's an awareness to say, I need to really think about why Debbie is coming across this way, or why she's so frustrated, or why Michael is angry about this. Let me look at it from his point of view. So asking questions, seeking information, trying not to be judgmental, really listening, that will develop trust within your employees. It'll help you stay connected, and you want to be connected to your employees. And then also knowing your own emotions, knowing that if something triggers you, having a reminder in your head that says, I know this is going to trigger me. So what do I need to do if I'm in the middle of this? Well, part of it is you're going to want to just pause for a moment. Awareness, again, is half the battle. Being aware of what your triggers are will help you in how you respond to your employees if something comes up that may raise your emotions around something. We do a lot of work around emotional intelligence at CEA, and we find that it can be quite helpful to learn about what your triggers are. There's assessments you can take, and some strategies to maintain that, because we want to show up as a leader with high emotional intelligence, and we can improve that. It's not like IQ. You can't improve your IQ, but EQ, which is emotional intelligence, you can improve. And then just so you know, it continues to be a top skill. Forbes recently mentioned that it is the most important leadership skill today. And because when we have empathy as leaders, we create that environment for all of these things to happen in our workplace, to include innovation, engagement, and keeping employees. We want to keep our good employees. We don't want them to go elsewhere. So all good things when we as leaders are able to demonstrate empathy to our employees, and also as employees to demonstrate it to each other. Our leaders need empathy too. So it doesn't just work, leadership down, it works, working up and down and across your organization. And then also we recommend, as you're going through change too, is don't be afraid to reach out to fellow leaders, to your own supervisor as you're going through changes, and talking to them, because again, leaders are people too, and we're human, and we go through a lot of those feelings through change as our teams do. Ask for coaching if you need it. Sometimes leaders need specific coaching from a third party to navigate through change. Coaching is about how do we help people achieve their goals, and how do we help them move forward. Coaching is not the past. Coaching is moving forward to achieve goals. So if you find as a leader that you have a need for coaching as you're going through changes in your organization, don't be afraid to ask for that. It can be very helpful for you and valuable for you as you navigate as a leader through change. Lean on your team, lean on each other, network. I encourage people, gosh, network with leaders outside of your organization too. You'd be surprised at how many companies are going through change. When I worked for a really large company, I did a lot of networking, leadership networking, because I learned so much from other leaders, totally different industries, yet they were applicable to my industry and the work that I did. And I do it today too. I find things that are applicable to the work that I do today. And then lastly, don't be afraid to ask for training and professional development. We all are growing, and some of us do need to shore up our skills or enhance some of our skills. And some just need to be reminded about what's important in our leadership role. And then I talked about well-being and wellness. This is important too. Take care of yourself, look after yourself. You're just as important as everybody else. Let's see here. Thank you. Kim just put a coaching link on the chat box too. We do coaching. I do a lot of coaching, also for CEA, and I know for a fact it can be really beneficial. So looking after yourself, taking care of you, mind your body, right? Making sure that we're taking care of ourselves. Again, we're just as important. And don't be afraid to feel what you're feeling. Folks, again, we've all been through a roller coaster in the past several years, and we're all in different places. Life has not been easy. The world has not been easy. Work has not been easy. It's okay to feel that. Have a routine, making sure that you have a routine where you discipline yourself, so that you're doing those things for you. Put yourself on your calendar. Make sure that you set that time for yourself. Keep it positive as much as you can too, for your own sake. What's good for me, this is going to benefit me, I need to do this. But that positivity can be so powerful also. And have faith in yourself. You have not achieved the level of success that you've achieved today without being pretty darn good and pretty darn successful, and having that work ethic and being able to learn and adjust and grow. You'll find that sometimes we need to just remind ourselves about what we've already accomplished in our lives, and that we are pretty darn good, and bringing up our own confidence, reminding ourselves, even through the thick of that change, when sometimes the going gets tough, you've been through this before, you've been successful in this before, and taking care of you and making sure you get that support that you need to. And of course, some things to think about as you build your toolkit to adapt to change. Know that, if something isn't working, don't be afraid to try something new. That's one of the things I love about the company that I get to work with today, CEA, is that we try new things. Sometimes we look at ourselves and think, we're going to do this. This is kind of a risk, but we try it. Sometimes it works really, really well and grows into great things. Other times we learn from it. So don't be afraid to adjust and try something new if you need to. Adapting to change, being flexible is what we need in today's workplace. And focus on what you can control. I always laugh at this because we want to control everything. Again, human nature, I want to be in control of everything. And the reality of it is there are so few things we're in control of. So what can you be in control of? What truly, I can be in control of myself, right? There are certain things within my workplace I can control, but I can't control everything. So focus on those important things that you can control, and the rest you do the best you can. That's all you can do. And of course, don't be afraid to get new perspectives from others and get some insights from other people. Don't be afraid to ask, what do you think about this? We're doing this, or I'm struggling a bit with this. What I have found so valuable in being able to get new perspectives, kind of like the 6 thinking hats that I talked about when you're making a decision, is things come out that weren't even on your radar. Not even a flicker on your radar. And by getting new perspectives, many times we get the answer that we need on what we have to do to move forward. So don't be afraid to do that. And I encourage that. Network, network, network. And then moving forward, just a question for you. What's one thing you can do today to lead successful change in your organization, whether small, whether large? What is that one thing maybe you can do today? And I challenge you, think about that. If you picked up 1 or 2 tips from today's discussion, put that on your calendar, because you're walking away knowing more about change than what you knew before you came into our workshop today, this webinar today. And commit to it. See if there's one thing you can do. You all have the handouts, as Tara said, and take another look. You're going to have copies of everything that we've talked about today. And here's some resources that we've used for this presentation and for this discussion. One thing I didn't put in here because I don't have it on a slide is, I'll say it one more time, is Dr. Edward de Bono, 6 Thinking Hats. And if you'd like to learn more about it, we're happy to talk with you about it. And or there's a lot of books out on there too. We have found that to be very, very helpful when companies are making decisions. And then with that, as Jerry mentioned earlier, we work with employers across the state. We get to work with the Monterey Workforce Board. And here are some of our membership plans too for employers. And we have a variety of them. So you'll have that in your handouts. Also, we even have a monthly membership for smaller employers, or those who maybe can't commit to a full-time, to a year-long membership. But these are also available to you and in your handout. And then also, I'm going to turn it over to Tara. I'd like to thank you all for being part of the workshop today. It's been a true pleasure, and we'll have time for questions once we finish up this part of it. But thank you so much. And Tara, I'm going to turn it over to you to hand over to share the codes, the HRCI and SHRM codes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jessica. And thanks everybody for participating. We really appreciate all of your questions and comments. It's super helpful to us. So yes, we do have some continuing education codes. The HRCI code is 617422, and the SHRM code is 23-M as in Mary 2524. I will also put this into the chat box right now for you. So those are there. We also have, I'm just going to send out some, I'm going to put all this stuff into the chat box as we go. The hotline number for Monterey County businesses is 888-217-6899. And let's see, I'm going to give you Jerry Hernandez's contact information as well. So as well as the website for Monterey County. So there's all that for you. That website is where you will be able to find the recording of this webinar. So give it a couple of days, but it will be up there. And also I wanted to give you the link to the webinar that Jerry was talking about earlier that's going to be coming up in June. It's the 10 ways to stay out of court. And so that's the registration link if you want to register for that. So it's a lot of information. I hope that doesn't bombard you. This is the QR code that I referred to before. If you will take a picture of that, that will send you straight over to a survey. We would love to have you take that. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. We really love working with Monterey Workforce Development Board and with Jerry, and your feedback on what we are doing well and what we can do better on is greatly appreciated. So I think that is it, Jessica. Again, I appreciate all of your insights and wisdom, and thank you everybody again for participating. Go out and have a really awesome day and stay healthy and dry.
Absolutely. And if you want to stay after and ask any questions, I'm happy to stay on for another few moments.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.